this idea that I'm a part of something larger than myself. I'm united actually, and the term that we use is this mystical body, this body that transcends the physical. I'm actually a part of this body, and that body has as head Christ. And we're back.
2 weeks.
Yeah, why weren't we in the studio last week?
I canceled. I had to work overtime.
Oh, okay. And then we tried rescheduling.
Yeah.
But our production crew's so busy.
Yeah,
you guys are popular.
Yeah, what's going on? You guys are...
we just,
What's going on at SG?
I was sick last time. When you guys did it, I wasn't here.
Well, thanks for sparing us.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is 3 weeks for you.
Yeah, it's been a while. I missed it.
All right, Dale's back in the booth.
Yeah.
Well, not a whole lot's happened, though. Depending on who and what candidate you were supporting.
Wait, haven't we had an episode since then?
No, we didn't have one after the election.
We didn't have a post.
We had
a post-election.
Did we have a post-election?
Yeah,
because it was titled
"Should Catholics Be Happy?"
Come on, Bobby.
Oh yeah, we did. Maybe we didn't talk about it enough.
You're just still. You're still on that cloud, huh?
Well, now that the people that he's appointing are a lot of Catholics, that seem to be good Catholics. So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about. And, I know a lot of people are hating on billionaire Elon Musk. I'm like, but his idea is to cut government, not to try to get more money involved. Like he wants to innovate and do things differently. Like just today, they're launching, should be here in a couple hours, the largest object ever to leave the Earth. I mean, it's like size of like a building that's going to shoot into space, and that's going on today. So this innovation of
that video, like you watch his videos on SpaceX,
they're crazy.
The rocket, I mean, they had a person walking around the base of the rocket.
Did you see that one?
It did. It looked like a building that they were. It's just so inspiring that they're doing that. And imagine what it's going to look like 5 years from now.
And it just keeps getting better. Like I said, it's like they showed the difference of the rockets 5 years ago, what they look like now, and what they're doing. It's just like, but now take that brain and tried to help advise other people. And like, we've been doing government for coming up almost 250 years of independence. And it's a lot of status quo. We're looking at a lot of problems and doing the same thing. It's like, okay, Department of Education, like since we started it, we went from #1 in education to 24th in the world, and we're spending 5-10x more money. So it's not necessarily that money is always a solution. We think that we just throw more money at it, the problem goes away. Sometimes money makes the problems worse. So it's just like taking new ways of somebody outside of the government or the bureaucracy on how to try to attack and solve some of these problems. Like it takes people who have radical ideas that seem—
who can bring fresh perspective.
Yeah.
And bring creativity.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's like we get stuck like, no, this is the way we've always done it. And that goes the same in the church. It's like, what are we've said this before, you made fun of me, what are the 7 last words of a dying church is we've always done it that way. And it's the same with government. Well, we've always done it this way, but we never got to the why we've done it this way. And is it time to adapt? Yeah. Is it time to try to move on, to try to make it more efficient? So that's what I'm excited about. It's like, let's try to innovate. Like universities, the cost of a university education is insane now. Like, can we bring it down? They're talking about having an American academy that's free, like the Peterson Academy. It's like thinking differently about education, thinking different about healthcare, thinking different about the way that we do.
Patrick Bet-David had a video that came out this week that was pretty good. If you just look for Patrick Bet-David, he talks about housing. So just Google YouTube Patrick Bet-David housing. The cost of housing now is just astronomical. And so like you look at people who are trying to get into the housing market, or are in the housing market, you're looking to upgrade, maybe you're in a starter home, you're looking to go up. Whatever the case is, it's so discouraging to see what the cost of a starter home is, the lack of starter homes. I mean, he breaks it down. He's a data guy. He's a numbers guy. He breaks it down. Just there are no homes available on the market. And so you might be in an area where there's a bunch of houses here. What are you talking about? But when you actually look at a larger view of the problem, most people live in urban areas. So that's where you're seeing the congestion. But outside of that, there really are no homes that are going up. Yeah. And it's driving up the cost. And sure, interest rates doesn't help, inflation doesn't help, but it extends into like every sector of our lives, whether it's in the grocery store, whether it's our tuition bills, whether it's the cost of living, cost of owning a home. It's really out of control. And so having somebody who can come in, who's successful in business,
different perspective,
who can bring a perspective that can maybe shake it up a little bit and innovate positively, that I think that's only a good
Well,
thing.
two of the ideas I've heard about housing, which I was like, I haven't heard one person ever say this. They're talking about building 10 whole new cities and making it a contest to who can make the best city.
Yeah.
Like this is like what Dubai's doing. They're making these huge cities in the middle of the desert. Like we have the best entrepreneurs in the world, the resources, everything else. We can't build whole new cities for people and have this to be people who are starting off like, hey, you come here, help build a city, then you get this house. Like innovating differently, what they're doing in like Austin,
like populations,
3D printing these houses.
Population's growing, but when's the last time like a new city sprung up? It's been New York, Chicago, LA forever.
But
so like Miami's gradually growing.
Why not?
Austin's gradually growing, but there's a demand. There has to be a stimulus though. There has to be an incentive for builders to go in and say,
make it
this is going to be profitable for me, for businesses to support it.
The two things that help generate it, incentive and competition. Like those two things, it's like, okay, like how do we settle the country? They gave away a free land, like the Northwest Ordinance or anytime they're like, hey, here's a homestead. Now there's no one there. Go and, till the land.
What was that Tom Cruise movie? That was a great movie.
Legends of the Fall?
Is that the one where Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise? Such a good movie, dude.
Yeah. I never saw the whole thing.
No?
No. But
Can't go back.
But I think also, we have to utilize technology. So like 3D printing homes are a big thing. Like in Austin, they're doing for the homeless crisis, they're using tiny homes that are not junk, that, incentivizing different.
Didn't Elon live in a tiny home for a bit?
Yeah, he sold all his stuff. He's living in like a tiny home.
One of the richest men in the world is living in a tiny home.
And, it like those kinds of ideas, like sometimes really
tiny
home's
not for me though.
Definitely not for me. I could have fit. But like, for example, like healthcare, like we've always like, hey, pill, surgery, things. Okay, well, there's underlying problems about healthcare. It's like our metabolic health and like our diet and our nutrition and our sedentary lifestyles. Like let's focus and subsidize those things to make people happy. Hey, the family's dying. What can we do to incentivize people to have more kids, not make it, tax incentive to not be married and not have kids, like what Hungary's doing, where they have these plans to try. Hey, you have more than 4 kids, you don't pay any income tax. Like how to do these, these programs to try to incentivize the things that we want more of. Like you want more people to take responsibility, to have good families and go to church and work out and take care of themselves. Like why not try to bring those earth-shattering ideas to all the different sectors of
so you're seeing this as a season of
revolution almost. Yeah.
Of change.
I hope so.
Where things are going to get shaken up, but shaken up in a good way.
Well, the big thing is we're $35 trillion in debt. We're spending more money on paying the debt down than we pay on defense.
Anything else.
So it's like trying to run a household with a credit card. Eventually, people come for the money that you owe, the bonds and grants, and that goes for, for local governments, for state governments, and they're having a hard time. So we have to stop spending money like drunken sailors and try to be a little bit more responsible and not necessarily just cut jobs and cut spending and increase taxes.
For the sake of doing it.
Yeah, but
to have purpose behind it.
To have purpose behind it and to grow the pie so everybody can get a piece of it so the GDP grows. If we're growing at 10% GDP, the spending and the taxes don't really matter. It's like you're exponentially growing, which is possible. China did that for a while at 10% allegedly, but why can't we do it with innovation? We have, the tech sector, we have the ingenuity, we have the workers, we have the wherewithal. We just need to take the regulations.
What you're saying is we need to be purposely American.
We need to be purposely American.
There
I like
you go.
that.
Put the
Let's
hat.
go.
There's
Let's
the
go.
title.
There's the title. What color's the hat though?
Red, white, and blue, baby. Red, white, and blue. And that goes with the church. There's some things that shouldn't change.
We got to drop
at
that
all.
in the shop. Purposely American.
Yeah, and there's things that we shouldn't change within the church, but there's some things that need to be radically changed. Like how do we reach fallen away Catholics? Like what are we?
You mean
doing?
like having a specific right for Mayans in the Amazon? Is that what you're talking about,
that's what
Bobby?
I'm talking about.
Yeah, tell people about that. People don't know.
Well, we talked about on one of the shows about a new right that they had. Where was it? Not the Mayan one. There was another one, another indigenous culture. I think it was in Africa. It was something else where they keep bringing this enculturation to the mass. Like that's going to help. It's like bringing rap music to try to check kids. It's like we're going to bring in the local culture into the mass instead of like trying to evangelize them on the gospel message.
You don't think
of
a rap
Jesus.
mass would be successful?
I do not.
They did it with polka.
I don't think it would work. And that seems to be the answer. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is hip, or hey, let's do what the kids are doing. It's like, that's not working. That's not what people are yearning for. And that's not what the statistics are proving out. And so these changes of changing the mass isn't the solution, but the way that we fish for men, the way that we feed the sheep, the way that we go out and do church should be different than we open up the doors and they should just come to us because we're so great. I mean, that hasn't worked as a methodology.
And the culture no longer supports it.
And it doesn't.
So
and
we have to change.
So, radical ideas on how to do things that are different. Like, hey, like Alpha, we preach that here of doing Alpha. That's like inviting people for a free meal and talking about Jesus, like in a non-confrontational way where people are encouraged to have questions and ask difficult questions and people not to be judgmental, and listen.
That's what Alpha's great at. It's just, hey, we're going to share a meal, we're going to hang out, and we're going to watch a 15, 20-minute video.
Yeah, but leading,
can't do that?
spending
Who wouldn't wanna do
resources and making that, like here at the parish, that's the most important part is evangelization, that feeds everything else. And that's the mission that's driving. And when, you're singly focused on that, then the other things happen. But if you're so inward focused on, maintenance and trying to save those things, just like the country, if we're just so worried about maintenance and not worried about, hey, how are we
not just
going to-
maintenance, but maintaining status quo.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's a good way to say it.
If we're so hard pressed to maintain status quo, then that thing that we're trying to protect and
Takes
keep
so much
going,
energy,
it just
yes.
ossifies.
Yeah.
Right? It dies in our hands. And so we have to be willing to let it go, let it breathe, hand it off to people who've got vision as well, so long as we're trying to achieve the same goal, whatever it is. So like in the church, the goal is what? To be disciples who make disciples. That's the Great Commission. That's what God's called the church to do. That's what he's commissioned the disciples to do. And nobody was more innovative or radical than the apostles. I mean, they literally went from town to town. They crossed continents to be able to bring the message in ways that hasn't been brought before, right? And so that's the spirit that we have to recapture today. And it doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that's why there was that whole thing last week with this new Amazonian rite, or what are they calling it?
Amazonian right now. This is a Mayan rite.
Yeah,
right.
new Mayan rite. It's like, that just feels like for the sake of inculturation, which just means it's a kind of a church term for we're going to use the things of an indigenous culture, of an existing culture, of a native culture, and we're going to draw that into the church and as a way of like self-identifying as church with those people that we're trying to reach out to. So,
But the traditional Latin Mass, no good.
Well,
Like that's anathema.
that's a whole other topic, Bobby, that we can go into.
But it's just, it's the same.
I know it is. It's very related.
It's very related and interconnected. And it seems unfair when we're like, we're going to start doing these weird things, but this thing that has happened for 1,500 years, like we're going to do this very different where women are involved. It's kind of extreme of what they're trying to do. But the thing that went on for 1,500 years, that's bad. It's like I can understand if you're trying to change and do things, but
so here with the traditional side,
yeah.
So like inculturation today is, let's say, like this Amazonian rite, right? Where there's a group of people that they still practice the culture, they still practice the language, the music, everything that comes within culture, right? Expression and all that. Nobody practices the culture that supports the traditional mass. Who's walking around speaking and reading in Latin?
Yeah.
And so like if I'm going to play devil's advocate, then are they really comparing apples to apples by saying, hey, we're allowing for this new rite because we want to reach these new people? But then you've got the traditional sort of saying, okay, but you're willing to do that. You're willing to create a new rite for these people, but you won't let us celebrate the traditional rite.
Well, if you're going to have...
It doesn't seem like an apples to apples comparison.
But at the end of the day, if it's about true diversity and inclusion and trying to bring people into the church, why would we already take away...
Those people that want the traditional mass, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate.
Just let them be.
Not let them be. Like, why can't they be a part of the universal church in the rite that we have?
And that goes for them.
In the Novus Ordo, right? Like, why can't they be part of that? Because that's really their culture.
Yeah. But why couldn't the people who were trying to lead into the church...
Answer my question, though, before you ask me one.
Well, I think that... Yeah, but the culture is different though. That they may not be speaking Latin, but they're living traditionally. They're living a life that is based on traditional roles within marriage and how to live their lives and how to be with their children and how they sing.
So
how
we
they
both
pray.
live traditionally.
Yeah, but not
But
as
we
much
don't
as
need
those-
like the traditional mass.
Not as much as people who are faithful to the TLM. They pray in Latin. They do Gregorian chant. They do those things outside the mass. They take liturgy of the hours and the Vespers very serious. They do a lot of those things. It isn't just like we just want the mass in Latin. There's a lot more to it. Like that community is very conservative as far as how they dress, how their kids dress. They all are dressed up. They wear suits to mass. Like they take it serious. So it isn't so much that it's just in Latin. I think that's kind of making it like
It's one aspect of it.
the language is
Right.
part of it, but how they live liturgically, live their life that way. Just like, hey, appealing to somebody.
So what you're
and trying
saying
to-
is like it's
so what you're saying is,
so what you're saying is that liturgical expression really resonates with the people who are living that culture,
yeah,
even today.
yeah. And
So they could be your
and I think
neighbor.
a lot of the bad parts, what you're trying to get at, and I understand, I see, is that people think that the solution is go back to the 1950s, that's going to save everything. I don't agree with that either. I think that there's always room to improve things and to move forward, that the solutions aren't in the past. The solutions are now and into the future, period. I do believe that. But I don't think dumbing down the faith and pandering, I would use the word pandering to local indigenous people to try to take whatever they're doing, even if it goes against the norms and the cultures of the mass, like women doing the incense and doing things that deacons would do and trying to do all these different things, or the Pachamama, or these other things that kind of seem like they're idols or that they're not what the normal church does, making exceptions to try to attract other people, because if we do these things, if we dumb it down to their level, that then they have an easier on-ramp to the church versus saying, hey, no, this is the standards. When we raise the standards, people will rise to the standards. And if they don't, then we need to do a better job at evangelizing why we do the things that we do versus, hey, we're just going to take everything you got and bring it in here, and then we're force everybody else
So what
to
if
do
someone
you're
makes
doing.
the argument, again, just playing devil's advocate, or to try to steelman that argument, you have to give concessions for a time
Yeah.
so that what you're presenting to people doesn't seem so foreign that they just reject it outright from the beginning. So by making those initial concessions, you're inviting them into an experience where the Holy Spirit can speak to them.
Yeah.
And then through that experience, you lead them into what the standard is.
But what I would
Couldn't
push
that
back,
be the take?
It could be, but I would push back like what history's on our side of the argument that I'm making is that we never did that before. This is new. So there's no evidence, there's no statistics to say, well, this does work. Like, no, what's worked and what's converted the world is loving people. The Jesuits traveled to Japan.
Well, we have done it before. That's why you have 23 different churches within
Yeah,
the
but they-
Catholic Church,
but
or
they
rites
all-
within the Catholic Church.
But they look
So
very.
it's like you
but they
can't
look
say-
very similar. They're not changing the
You
mass
have
itself.
Byzantine, you've got
but it's not-
Latin, you've got
You got Marian.
you got the Roman rite, you got the Maronites. So
But
it's
they're
like
not-
they all look different, though.
Yeah, but they're not adding women into it. They're not bringing in like pagan type stuff to it. They're still bringing.
That's where you're drawing the line.
I'm
Just
drawing
to
the
be
line.
clear, that's where you're drawing
Yeah,
the line.
it's the pagan aspects of it where they're almost bringing in different idols and weird, like, indigenous practices that they have to try to dumb it down instead of raising it up. Like, hey, no, you want to do liturgical dance? That's part of your culture? Great. If that's an expression, great. But bringing in a statue and bringing in women and changing the actual format of the mass, from what I'm reading, it just, I'm not the only one who's a little, my gears are being grinded. It's just like it's.
Well, the part that I saw that really just, again, red flag goes up, where the priest and others, priest and women, at different points of the mass, act in the role of the presider.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Like that,
Yeah.
to me, it's like, well, help me understand that. Where's the logic in that? Because then what worries me is you set precedents.
Yeah.
Because then that becomes the precedents that you've set, and that gets built upon. So if we're diluting the role of the priest as presider throughout the mass, and we're inviting other people to act in that capacity, then what's to stop from other kind of innovations
into the regular
to
Novus
step in.
Ordo or any of the other rites.
and where like the right now, what does it look like 5, 10, 15 years from now?
And I think that's the slippery slope. But I think that the way that it's been done throughout history is, that they do have different rites, but they're not changing things dramatically as far as the process, the words, the liturgy itself, how the liturgy, has been celebrated, since we have documented from the Didache and St. Justin Martyr, how it's been done. they're changing things that are not supposed to be changed. And that's where I'm worried about. But yeah, if they want to have dancing, if they want to have prayers in their own language, they want to do things that are like that. Fine.
Are they changing things that can't be changed?
I don't know. It's new, so we'll find out about what's going on. But the videos I seen didn't look
like certain parts of the mass can be changed, which we've seen them changed.
Oh yeah,
the parts that really can't be changed are like the Eucharistic prayer. That can't be changed. You can't just go like Father can't make up his own Eucharistic prayer, even though I've seen some that do.
Yes,
right. But you can't do that. Like that's something that can't change because it's tied to the actual form matter of the sacrament of the Eucharist, right? But other things can change. So,
like for example,
well, the one that we brought up before, not to keep kind of like bringing an example, so I'll just stick with what we brought up. The incensing, right? It says that the role of the one who incenses can be someone other than the presider, which typically it's the presider who then can hand it off to the deacon. And now with the introduction of this new rite, it could be even women who act in that role of incensing. And it doesn't even have to be a thurible, which is like the traditional, it could be a bowl. It could be, so like those are elements that they're changing. And then you wonder, well,
next thing you know, it's sage.
Can it be changed? Yeah, I mean, those are things that can.
I mean, those are the things that I'm like there's a slippery slope. It's like, so what else are we willing to change? When does it stop?
Yeah.
It's like if you give an inch, people will take a mile because there's a like everybody wants to be their own pope. Well, everybody wants to do what they want to do.
The thing
everybody
I appreciate about being Catholic is
the universality
of it. And that's where I was going. I can walk into, so if I can walk, I go to an Arabic church sometimes, Arabic Catholic church. I can walk in not knowing the language. You guys can walk in not knowing the language. Give yourselves 5 seconds. You know exactly where you are in the mass.
Yeah.
And then what that does is, even though I don't know the language, I know how to participate.
Yes.
I know like what my role is vis-a-vis the liturgy, right? Vis-a-vis where we are in this act of worship. You change the rite, then it's like, okay, it now becomes exclusive to this group of people that actually know what's going on. And that's one of my criticisms of the traditional, even though I appreciate the reverence of it, I appreciate the richness of it, I appreciate the history of it, I appreciate the fact that it was the liturgy of the church for 1,500 years and countless saints came through it. Like there's so much
almost
there.
All the saints.
But if you don't know the rite, then you can't really enter into it. And that's what's important to me as a Catholic who's trying to invite others into that relationship, the ability for them to enter into it. So I can go to Hispanic Mass, same thing.
Same thing. I get what you're saying, but my point is just let them be. Like there's one thing of saying, no, you can't ever do that. Like there's only one right that's saying no. You know, these other things are not. It's like, then just let them be. And if they grow exponentially, then God's blessing that. But to put up walls and say, no, you can't do this thing, it's creating more division. If we want to create a church,
you're speaking reference to like those who
want to have that,
want to have that
community,
traditional experience.
Yeah, like and not saying that every church needs to do that. I don't go. I've been to one traditional at mass. I don't want to worship that way. I appreciate.
This is more like your libertarian sensibilities.
Yeah, it's just like let them be. Like, but what they don't understand is just like in everything, what gets persecuted grows. It's like it just, well, why are they doing that? People get more curious about it, and that's why more and more young people.
You ban a book. That's what people want to read.
People want to read. It's like, so they don't understand that's what they're doing. This is clear clericalism. It's like, no, we know what's best. Amazonian's good. That's bad. You're shut down, but they could do what they want. It's just creating conspiracy theory on top of it. It's like, see, they're so against us. It's like, no, if it's not from God, it will die on its own. But if it is of God and you closed it, like what the Jews told, hey, don't kill Jesus. Don't mess with him. Stop messing with the disciples. Gamaliel was like, hey, if it's not of God, it'll just die. But if it does, it's like, hey, we may be killing God. Like, we don't know. So that's the same thing with this. Like, how do they know? Like, this is the way it's been done all these years. Like, if it's going to die, like, don't try to make it bigger, but just let it be like where it's already been for hundreds of years and stop like persecuting those people and closing their churches. It's like, it's causing all kinds of division throughout the church. If you want people to come together and have all these other different rights, then it shouldn't put the weight on the scale for this one, but on that one, just let them, if it dies, it dies and stuff like that, but not trying to get rid of it altogether. I just don't think that's very Christian. It just seems to be short-sighted and divisive.
Well, you can't argue with, especially this younger generation of seminarians and priests. I want to I don't want to put a number to it because I would just be making up a number. But a good number of them are trending more traditional, more conservative.
Yes.
And you wonder, like, these men, a lot of them that I encounter are very genuine.
Yes.
And so what's behind that movement in their hearts? What's behind that movement that's drawing them to the more traditional expressions of the faith and the liturgy in particular? We're talking about the Mass.
I think a lot of it has to do with the beauty of it. I think it's the reverence. I think that it's traditions. People like, to be involved in something that seems like a ritual. It's like we're all ritualistic people. Everything we do is ritualized. It's like it's a beautiful ritual, and it's something that's been tied to, like we said, like almost all the saints
What I don't want to lose, Bobby.
ride.
Yeah, what I don't want to lose. We need to recapture the apostolic spirit that moved the early church. Yeah. We need to do that. It's not a question of should we need to. Now, the question is how we do it. And so what we have to be careful of, are we who are stepping up as disciples and as leaders in the church, are we formed in this apostolic spirit? Are we formed with this drive to evangelize and to go out and make disciples of all nations?
And equip those to do it.
And to be equipped with the practical and pastoral abilities to do that. Because not every priest, speaking humbly and with all due respect, not every priest is made to be a pastor, right? That's a specific office in the church. But every one of us, whether you're a priest, layperson, religious, fill in the blank, we're all called to make disciples. And so like we have to really live that evangelistic spirit, that spirit of I'm in love with Jesus so much, and he means so much to me, and he wants to make a difference for you because he loves you. I want to invite people into that relationship the best that I can. That's so important for today's time because we're seeing like they're trying to find meaning outside of Christ. They're trying to find community outside of the church, and it's just leading them further and further down the wide path. And we need to capture people back. Okay, so that's the first thought. When people have that experience of Jesus, then they want to come to know him and to live with him. And that's where their desire to grow in their faith really kind of becomes not just something from outside, it's something from within. Like there's this impetus to want the reverence, to want the sacred, and so you have, like, I see this a lot in people. They get to know Christ, they fall in love with him, they begin living the faith, they begin sharing the faith, but as their prayer life grows, it tends to be more traditional, right? They appreciate the contemporary, but it tends to the more reverent, it tends to the more solemn, it tends to the more, and that's okay. Like that's that both and tension in the church. Yeah. And so what you're saying is if we just completely marginalize a group that is living that traditional expression, why do that? And then B, we're putting a negative spotlight on that expression of faith.
And that goes for that side as well too, that not pointing fingers at this side, say you're not really Catholic. I think that's part of it. When someone's pointing the fingers at you, like, hey, no, don't do this.
Oh, that gets me all the time. Like the Taylor Marshalls, which I don't mean to bring, he's a brother in Christ. He's a fellow Catholic.
But that's the trap.
But that's the energy that you get.
That's the pharisaical trap.
Like if you're not doing it according to like the pre-Vatican II, if you're not doing it in Latin, if you're not doing all the hours of the liturgy, if you're not doing,
it should go both ways.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then it's hypocritical. What I'm saying is more, like you said, a libertarian thing. Like, hey, if we're going to let the Amazonians and the Mayans have it and everyone else, right, like just let it be. Like, don't persecute it. Don't shut it down what it is. You don't have to add new masses. You don't do all this stuff. But like, let those places where it's already been established, like stay there. And the statistics are all growing that, like you said, the church is growing more traditional. And the people who are getting involved in the church, who want to go to the seminary, who want to be priests, they're serious because of just the church from the scandals and all those different things. Like if you want to give your life to Christ in that way and to serve him in his church, it's like they're being a lot more serious. And Bishop Barron says this all the time, like when he was coming up in the 70s and the 80s, the faith has been so watered down. And I think with the traditional community and how I resonated to, the church that I grew up in, when I became a convert, was pretty traditional. It wasn't traditional Latin mass, but it was definitely, more traditional, like the organ music and the chants and the prayers. And it was that reverence that really attracted me. It was the history of it all. It felt like I was going back in time to something that was special. It felt like somebody was letting me in, like Shia LaBeouf said, like somebody was letting me in on a secret, that I was part of this group. Because I always thought to be Catholic, you had to be born into it. I didn't know that you could become Catholic. Like, oh, they're a Catholic. Like, no one's ever telling me about it. I thought it was like a secret group, like the Freemasons or something. Like, I didn't know I could even become Catholic. I didn't even know anything about it. And then when I became Catholic, I'm like, it's like, no one's told me about this. Like, what's going on? It's like, it felt like somebody was letting me in on a secret that it was like, and it is, to me, it's like, it's the greatest secret in the world, but it's like, it's open for everybody. But I was moved by when Shia LaBeouf said that because that's what I thought. I'm like, so my response was to be reverent. And to me, reverent just means that I'm taking God serious.
Yeah.
What he's telling me, I believe him and I want to take it serious. It's like, that fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. So I was fearing him because I'm taking him serious. But then the second move has to be that encounter to move me to want to be in a relationship with, to get rid of the sin, to repent, get rid of all those bad things, but to take him serious about the promises for the future for my life.
I would take that one step further and say, because we have a same outlook on this. Yeah. I would say I take seriously what God and his church tell me. Yeah. And what we're discussing here is it's a bit of like a cognitive dissonance where it's like the church has said this for generations, for centuries, and now it's telling us in some respects there's a block here, there's a no. Yeah. And that's where it's sowing confusion for some people. Yeah. Like, why can't we practice this way? Why can't we worship this way? Why can't we? When you're seeking that seriousness, you're seeking that reverence. Yeah. What I appreciate about not just like we're kind of highlighting the traditional rite, but the Byzantine rites, right? John Paul II famously said, like, the church breathes through two lungs, the east and the west. And when you look at the eastern lung of the church, which is 22 different rites, there are 22 churches within the larger church, and the expressions that they've preserved that have remained largely unchanged. They're very opposed to change, and we can kind of unpack that a little bit. Yeah. But most of them follow the Byzantine rite, which was derived out of Constantinople, right? The idea that Rome had migrated from Rome. The empire was established in Constantinople. There was a rite that came out of there, this Byzantine rite. That's the one that they celebrate. Well, when you enter into that rite, when you enter into a Byzantine practicing church, there's almost this timelessness that you encounter. And in that timelessness, you encounter the God who stands outside of time. Yeah. And there's a beauty in that. I think that's what people are searching for. Yeah. They're not searching for something different to be different for just the sake of being Latin different.
Or anything
no,
like that.
They're searching for that which takes us out of space and time to encounter the God who sits outside of space and time. Yes. And that's what these liturgical expressions can do. Yeah.
It feels like you're in heaven. Like the way that it, some of these brick buildings and like the churches are built in the 60s and 70s. Like people aren't being like, it's supposed to be a house of God. They're supposed to be beautiful. It's supposed to be transcendent. It's like everything's supposed to matter.
And that's what we try to do like at SJE, St. John the Evangelist.
I think they do.
We try to do a great
job of blending it. It's orthodox with a twist. And that's what I like what Father Milena said. But I just thought of a good point that what you're saying with the two lungs is that if we ever want a reunification with the Orthodox brothers and sisters and they see that we're cracking down on the traditional, why would they ever want to reunite with us?
Well, that has been a criticism that's been
raised. That's what I'm saying. So why wouldn't we still have that wing to like, see, we still keep a lot of these traditions along, but we also see the importance of this. But if we say that's not good, like, well, you definitely wouldn't want us because we're like to the extreme of that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So even in an ecumenical discussion, that's not very unifying either, especially for the people who are on the outside looking in, like, well, whatever you guys are doing, I want to.
Well, not even ecumenical. Ecumenical, that, again, another church term.
Yeah.
It just means the dialogue between different Christian denominations. So you have multiple Christian denominations, the dialogue between us, hopefully to work towards reunification. But you don't have to go ecumenical. The churches that are in communion with Rome, who are Eastern, That's a criticism that they feel that we have to Westernize. There's this almost like this spoken, unspoken pressure to Latinize. And you have within those churches, and these are things that are kind of like talked behind doors, right? And which is a good thing, right? We don't have to air out all of our grievances online. This is not what we're trying to do. We're just having conversations that
we didn't even know what we were going to talk about.
We were supposed to be talking about Thanksgiving and Christ the King, which I guess we'll get there.
We'll get there.
But that's a criticism that is even had within the church. Yeah. Like we're Eastern and we're proud to be Eastern. We're proud to be Maronite. We're proud to be Greek Melkite. We're proud to be Syrian Malabar. Like we want to preserve these traditions and these cultures without the pressure of having to Latinize or to have to follow the rules that are kind of over the church in the West.
But I would push back too. Well, Africa's not Latin, and they're pushing back. So like where are they coming from? They see the slippery slope as well of a lot of these documents that seem to be confusing, or there's all kinds of ambiguity about what we're teaching as far as dogma and doctrine.
I thought the African bishops did a great job, especially around the
fiducious supplicans.
Yeah, the pastoral blessing for those who are in, I forget the title of it, irregular situations or irregular couples. Yeah. And I thought they pushed back respectfully because we can push back. Like that's the thing. The church is a monarchy, but it's not a dictatorship. Yeah. If it's run well, because a monarchy can fall into dictatorship. And I think our Holy Father has tried through this synod process and the constant speaking of synod to hear from people. Now, he can be criticized on who he's hearing from, but the idea is he wants to hear from people. And I thought the African bishops, when they spoke up, I thought they did it respectfully. And what they were trying to do is they're trying to say, within our culture, these permissions are just sowing confusion because we don't believe the things that, let's say, the church in Germany believes, the church in the United States believe in terms of how marriage can fall or how couples can associate and what the definition of a union is and what can be blessed as a union. Like those aren't things that fly for us, but this is our culture. This is what we hold dear. These are the values that bring a family together. These are the values that bring a man and a woman together. And we want to celebrate those things. So we can't in good faith accept this teaching, right?
And I just listened not too long ago, Bishop Barron on War on Fire did a good talk called 5 Things That We Can Learn from the African Churches.
Thanks for sharing that.
And it's like the only church that's really growing crazy is them. Like,
well, he was spotlighting like the church in Nigeria.
Yeah,
is growing. Like the numbers are.
It's crazy. It's exponential. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's growing huge. Yeah. And it's not that they're making their own African rite. That's not what they're doing. So to push back on your point, it's like they're not going to the native tribes and saying, well, do the things that you do with your shamans.
What point did I make?
Well, that
we made so many points. What point are you pushing back on?
Well, when you were steel minding the argument about of trying to reach out to the cultures,
sure, yeah,
that they're not doing that in the African churches. Sure, they're still bringing in things that are cultural, but they're not changing the mass. They're still
the mass is still the mass.
The mass is still the mass, and we can learn from them. It's like they're not Latin, they're not Western, but they seem to be understanding what it is to evangelize and how to share the good news. And I think we should be learning from those, just like Elon Musk or what people are doing in other countries like Japan, that they're doing great in education, these things. Like we should look at to see what other people are doing who are successful and copy them. Like there's nothing illegal about copying, like, hey, what are you guys doing in Africa? Like, what can we learn from you as far as reaching out and getting new people? Because we're not doing a great job at it. So trying to be humble, like, oh, we're the Western church, we're so great. Like, no, African church is blowing up. Like, what are you guys doing?
What are you guys doing?
Hey, help us out. Maybe we should go to Africa and you guys show us what's going on. Like, no, now you're sending missionaries to United States because we don't have enough priests. Yeah. And Africa used to be a mission territory. So like things have changed. And what has changed seems to be that, they seem to be.
Well, how many times do you hear? Like, oh, there's fathers from Africa I can't really understand. He's got such a thick accent. And, well, A, God bless Father for being here.
Yeah.
A, thanks be to God that he sent us a priest. And C, would you consider sending your son to the seminary? Like, is that something you talk about in your household? Vocations and discerning vocations and right. So it's like if we're not sending our own sons,
if we're not
encouraging it like within our homes, then
that's
it's a kind of we're holding the
that's
mirror
been
up to
going on
ourselves.
the last 2 weeks. My son he's 8, and we got him a mass kit like 2 years ago, maybe for Easter, or last year for Easter.
Yeah.
And now he's brought it back out the last 2 weeks. So we've had mass at our house like every day for the last 2 weeks that he's leading mass. And he knows almost all the prayers, like no sheets. He just knows almost all the what the priest says. Not like he'll look up and get all
Is
the
he wearing a chasuble or a dalmatic?
He's got a cloth. He's got a tablecloth that is green that mom cut a
Just
hole
popped a
out
hole
of it.
through?
Yeah, popped
Yeah.
a hole through his head.
So it's a chasuble.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and but he knows almost
Not that dalmatics are bad.
yeah, but he almost has like all like what the
Good for
priest
him.
says by heart, like
Yeah.
almost all the prayers. It's crazy. I'm like, I'll be like,
I'll
but he's
catch
not
myself
reading.
at mass because you're not supposed to do this technically.
I do it. I just helps me follow.
I know, but you're not supposed to say it.
I say it like I don't say it out loud.
I'll catch myself doing it like under my breath.
I definitely don't say the doxology part though, the consecrated where he's actually in him and
Yeah.
to him and that. But
When I catch myself, then
I
just,
don't do the Last
I
Supper
stop.
part. I do like all the other prayers.
words of
Wh-
institution.
Which that can kind of lead us into Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving's coming up, and the Mass. And the part in the Mass that what the priest says, which is crazy to think about, is that it is our duty, it is right and just to give thanks always. It is our salvation always and everywhere to give you thanks. Like our salvation is to give thanks. And obviously the Eucharist and the Eucharist, that means Thanksgiving. But how important part of what the Mass is a Mass of Thanksgiving. And I thought that's a good transition. So
That was a great transition.
great transition.
I'm going to blow your transition up
All right, go ahead. It's all right.
by saying, are you watching football on Thanksgiving? All
Always.
right, dude, we moved into the Thanksgiving part of this episode.
Yes.
So are you watching
Transition,
football?
Mike's doing the chapters. So
Yeah.
you fast forward through all of our shenanigans about the liturgy wars.
Completely unplanned, but that was great. You watching football?
Of course.
Did you
Except for
watch the Bears game on
Oh,
Sunday?
Of course. Huh? It's like the
Did you guys
worst.
catch the game?
Of course.
It's the worst. Being a Bears fan is the worst fan in the world to me. It's like, I mean, Green Bay, we had them, and and my wife's like, you're not happy? I'm like, absolutely not. They're going to blow this game. I just knew they were going to blow it. But yeah, Thanksgiving, they'll blow it.
But like the last 3 seconds,
doesn't matter.
it's like, we got it. But in the back of my mind, like, we're going to screw it up.
We're
We
gonna-
got it. No, we're going to
This
screw it up.
11 in a row, they lost to Green Bay. It's just,
They need an O-line. That's what they need.
Who are the Bears
They need
playing
new
on
owners.
Thanksgiving?
yeah, they
Yeah.
always play Thanksgiving.
Who they play?
I think they're playing the Lions.
Yeah, they always
might
play
be
the
the
Lions.
Lions,
usually.
or the
And the
Vikings.
Cowboys.
That's right.
Cowboys and the Lions always playing Thanksgiving.
It is.
Who are they
You're
playing?
right. It is
It'll be the
Detroit.
Lions. They'll be playing Detroit, and
Yeah.
the Cowboys always
Detroit's
play
like what?
9-1.
9-1?
They're the best team in the NFL, and it's not close.
I don't know. Chiefs are what, 9-0?
No, they just lost.
They just lost.
to the
Oh, they
Bills.
did?
They lost to the Bills.
Yes.
It was awesome.
Oh.
Patrick Mahomes threw a game-losing interception. It was glorious.
Yeah.
Ever since Mahomes and Reed stood up for Butker, I'm a fan.
Yeah, I don't really like the
they
Chiefs. I'll
could have
just root for
easily
him.
they could have easily
Well, he got
threw him under the bus, but they were like, no, he's our
They didn't, and he had an ad during the political season. He had like a traditional ad. He's a
Who did?
traditional Harrison Butker.
oh, okay.
He created his own ad and had it on social media and
I didn't see that.
being pro-life and
All right.
but more and more athletes. We were talking before that but more athletes are praising Jesus openly. This seemed like it's a new freedom where people are not so scared to be canceled or to say, hey, I just want to start to say Jesus is Lord, not just when they're winning a speech, but like more openly, like
John Jones after the UFC
John
fight.
Jones.
He's like, hey, we're all here, we're all happy. I just got to give praise to Jesus Christ. And then he busted out some moves.
The YMCA.
Yeah. Which they're doing a lot of that. You want to talk about
Everywhere.
not being afraid.
Yeah.
Someone,
It's like every other touchdown. They're like,
I was going to say, someone on the Lions just did that.
The Raiders,
Yeah.
the
College too.
soccer. Yeah. it's
you know what I
actually-
love about that dance? And when they do it, white, black, brown, I don't care who you are, everybody's doing that dance.
Yeah.
So it's like you want to talk about unifying the country.
Yeah.
Dance.
It's the dance, dude.
Well, the song is not the greatest. No, the YMCA song. I'm not a big fan. Are you a Village People guy yourself? You look like somebody.
Can't say
you look
that
like
I am.
somebody does the motions.
Both of us with the beards, we could probably both pass for it.
Yeah, you could be the construction worker. I'll be the policeman. Or what?
Hey, between the four of us, we got a little party here. We got a posse.
Yeah.
But I mean that well, we've had so you had the Tyson Paul fight, and then you had this big UFC fight.
What was the deal with the Netflix buffering for that fight?
Dude, I think their servers were just blown up.
Yeah.
Like, how, you think Netflix would be able to handle
they're supposed
that?
to have a Christmas Day football game. Like they better get that figured out before. And
But
that's
then the
just brutal.
Tyson's the interview. You guys saw that?
Oh, with his butt cheeks out.
Yeah.
They're like, this is a humiliation ritual.
Is that what it
That's
is?
what they were saying.
Illuminati humiliation.
It was
ritual?
definitely a lot of it was like he was pulling punches. You could
Oh
see.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he came out afterwards saying like, I gave it my best, and
He
for
sat
those
there
of you
and bit
that
his
said I-
glove the whole time.
yeah.
Yeah. It's weird.
He did that
kept
his
doing
whole
that so
career.
make sure he has his hand up so he wouldn't get knocked out in his face because he kept keep his hand there blocking him while he was. He's like, I'll just hold on to it so I don't pull it back down and open my face up. I think that's what he was doing, to hold it up there.
Tyson.
Yeah, because he was holding it like this, so he couldn't get punched on the strong side. So he made sure that it would stay there. He just biting and keeping it there.
I heard somewhere he's
used
done
to
that
do
forever.
Yeah, but
Like-
he would just nibble on it. But he was like biting and holding it on.
Oh yeah.
But you see the videos of him training for the fight
And he's like,
But he got
An animal.
But he got
versus
sick.
him.
He didn't remember he had that they delayed it.
Yeah, they were
because
saying he
was
lost
on
blood and
he
all
was
that
on an
stuff.
airplane. That he almost died
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah, but I think more the UFC has become such, and I've been a big fan for a long time of UFC, and it is so culturally like significant of what's going on. But obviously Trump is making it a big deal, but like now everybody's there. The who's is there.
Yeah.
It's like it's not the Oscars or these things. Like everybody wants to be ringside at UFC.
Well,
fights.
it used to be
all
like
the
a
actors,
big, like a heavyweight boxing fight. Everybody wanted to be at the MGM Grand when that big fight went down, and you're seeing all the shots of who's in, all the celebrities, that's what the UFC is becoming.
Yeah.
And so you saw Trump walk in with like his whole posse.
The Avengers are calling them.
Yeah,
The
like
Avengers,
They,
yeah.
they all walked. I'm like
Elon
RFK,
Musk
like who's in
and Kid
this
Rock
group?
and Jelly Roll and Dan Bongino. And,
You saw that look he gave Rogan.
Yeah.
Like what did he say?
Well, they went from the first time they met. Rogan said he was ready because he knows when he shakes
knows the
his hand,
shake.
he does the
pull.
which he does it with world leaders, and it's like, okay, it's aggressive. It's okay, he's a business guy he's trying to have his dominance and stuff like that. But Rogan was ready for him this time. But this time it's like it was an embrace, and I've heard him talk like, hey, you got to be a little crazy on the world stage, and he understands, and he got to know him personally. Like that's just like anybody. It's like, if somebody wants to talk trash about somebody that I know, but like I've got to know them versus people who talk about somebody that they really don't know. So that when you sat down to get to know him a little bit, then everybody who talks to him like, no, he actually cares. He'll ask you who your wife is and how's your family doing. He remembers all their names. Like he's good that way. And it's just sad that the country goes to, and he's not perfect and no candidate is. And this isn't a blanket.
What person is?
Not me, for sure. I have a hard time remembering people's names.
What person's perfect?
But to care, like you're the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
You're a rich guy, and you take time. Hey, how's your mother-in-law doing? Like, what's going on? Like, he doesn't have to do those things, but he generally does that with everybody. And you hear that from people who actually get to know him, or the stories of him helping people and not tooting his horn and things like that. And he's obviously got a checker past. And like I said, no one's perfect. But I think that to see that people who do support one candidate don't have to be so ostracized or scared to come out. Like Sly Stallone came out and compared him to the next George Washington. I don't know about that, but he's free to come out and say, I support him. But before, all the celebrities were scared to even be associated.
What's the deal with, speaking of celebrities in this whole situation, what's the deal with Bluesky? That just became a thing overnight.
Yeah.
Well, they're all trying to leave.
Yeah, they're
Twitter.
all jumping X.
It's the liberal Twitter or X.
It's like their version of Rumble.
Yes.
It's going to be another. It's going to be another echo chamber.
Or like Parlor, like their
Yes.
version of that.
Same
Or Truth
thing.
Social.
Yep.
Who's on Truth
They're
Social?
mad that people are
Nobody's
allowed
on
to
Truth
say
Social.
things on there that they disagree with.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Well, I was just listening because I like Piers Morgan because he brings on both sides. And I like to hear an actual debate and not people just, sometimes he brings in Chank and he yells. But like just now, they just had 5 liberals on talking about the election. And it's like they're in an echo chamber. They're not listening to the people, what the people said. It's like, stop with the identity politics. Stop with these things. Like it's about the economy, stupid. Like a lot of people were voting with their pocketbooks and the wars. Like stop looking at all these other things. Maybe you had a bad candidate and maybe it's about the economy more than what you thought. And it went across racial divide, went from, more women and men and Hispanic. It's like all these different categories. Like, but if you only go to a place where everybody just agrees with what you say, are you ever going to grow or learn? It's like, not everything that you disagree with is misinformation or disinformation needs to be canceled and we need to get rid of it. Like that's what they keep saying. It's like, oh, Elon Musk is just disinformation. Well, then argue it. Use your voice to, if it is those things, to offer an alternative like we did about the TLM versus the Novus Ordo. Like have those arguments in a respectable way, but get it out there and not just say, well, that's misinformation or disinformation. That shouldn't even be on the internet. Like your opinion doesn't matter. It's like we should have these open dialogues.
Which the thing I truly relished and appreciated in this cycle, hopefully it's on the way out. This idea that celebrities' voices somehow matter more than anyone else's.
You mean you don't listen to Megan Thee Stallion?
Yeah, Beyonce is not going to sway how I'm going to vote. Yeah, that's a good 10 million spent.
The Avengers didn't change your mind, Khalil?
Oh yeah, assembling the Avengers the week before the election. No, that didn't.
Or Taylor Swift?
That didn't do anything for me.
I thought you were like a Swiftie.
Yeah, I got to draw the line in my Swiftiness, right? I hope that dies. The idea that like because you have a celebrity that comes out and says something, I'm just supposed to fall in line. The exchange of ideas is what matters. And so it doesn't matter if you're Brad Pitt or Dale Strubing. Like, if you have a good idea, that's what should win the day.
And then put them out there in the marketplace of ideas. Like, go on a long-form podcast, whatever, whether that's Call Her Daddy or, Pod Save America or Rogan or whatever. But why the success of a show like this or Rogan, I just put us in the same camp as Rogan.
I think you're the only person that would do that, but I love it. I love the enthusiasm and the spirit.
It's a long-form conversation. We're like, we don't have a script. I don't have anything written in front of me. We're just having a conversation and we're hopefully
trying to figure stuff out.
We're hopefully the Holy Spirit is guiding us and we're trying to be charitable both ways. But it takes a long time sometimes to get to ideas and to points. I mean, I ramble on, I get it. But sometimes it takes time to try to organize your thoughts and try to get it together. And people can't fake it longer than 40 minutes. Like, you start to see who people are. And
unless you have The Rock on. Then that guy will fake it for 3 hours.
That was pretty, well,
that was a brutal episode.
That was pretty fake. But it's hard. But he's been doing that, he's been fake for a long time. But that's why it's interesting. Like, they were trying to set the narrative like JD Vance is a weird guy, and the longer the podcast you go on, everyone's like, man, I would go have a beer with him. Like he's a Marine and he's a dad and he's talking about his kids saying the cuss word because he said it. It's like, oh, that's how Mike got
his grandma,
his grandma, and like it's like podcasts are more important than people think. They're talking about that they're going to probably even give like these alternative news sites like press credentials at the White House briefings. I'm like, that's how influential they are.
Could you imagine Rogan showing up?
Yeah. He's not leaving Austin.
He's not leaving Austin.
Could you see like Michael Knowles or like the Daily Wire or you see, people like that, which they get more views than CNN and MSNBC. They should have a voice. And I think if we want to come together as America, you can't have one side winning the entertainment, universities, the media, all the news. Like, if we're honest, it's skewed one side, and there have been these alternate forms. Like X has allowed voices to get bigger, but I mean, it's basically Fox News and the Wall Street Journal editorial. Other than that, it's like in Daily Wire, which built its own thing, but all the 257, the CBS, NBC, 60 Minutes, CNN, MSNBC, all these different things are all one-sided. And even on those shows, they have like a fake Republican.
It's not just one-sided. It's like the gig's up. We can tell that these are corporately captured outlets.
Yes.
I mean,
so let's bring in both
the M and MSNBC stands for Microsoft. CNN is run by Turner. Fox is run by a family. Like they all have private interests.
But what is good
and these outlets move those interests.
When you bring these other people on, they have actual conversations. Like CNN was smart by bringing that Scott Jennings on. He's an actual conservative who knows how to argue, and it makes for good television. It's like instead of just hearing 5 people on the same thing, like
you're telling me you don't watch The View?
No, I don't. But that's what that Blue Sky is going to be. It's going to be their own. it's their own echo chamber. But if they really want to learn and they really want to try to draw and learn lessons from the past and have a growth mindset and to be humble, it's like you want to hear what other people are saying. And I think the only people who actually are starting to understand like really what happened is that, the progressive wing of the Democrat Party really went too hard on the identity stuff and less on the Bernie Sanders type populism stuff. Like Trump, is more of a populist. Bernie Sanders was very popular in the populism side where they should have been pushing on the working class stuff.
I don't know who posted this, but Elon retweeted it. And it was a picture of RFK Jr., Tulsi, Trump, and Elon. And it said the Democrats won the election. And he goes, true.
They were all Democrats.
All four of those people at one point, just within the last 16 years, they were all Democrats, practicing avowed Democrats. So it goes to show you like how ideas and how culture has shifted. Yeah. And a lot of them will tell you who were on that side, I don't feel like I left the party. I feel like the party left me. Yeah. I don't feel like I abandoned those ideas.
If the people have to be honest.
But the ideas morphed into something that I don't ascribe to. Yes. And so they find a home somewhere else. Yeah. And the thing that I appreciate, like the walkout we were saying at the UFC, you saw all these people walking out with Trump. And it's like what is this group of people that just got collected together? And it's from RFK to awesome Kid Rock to like where else would you see that group of people?
It's awesome to see those things. And it's what America's meant to be. It's supposed to be a melting pot of ideas where we can disagree. Yeah. But the things that we should all be agreeing on is free speech. This country was built on the First Amendment and freedom of religion and freedom of speech, not censoring misinformation or disinformation. That's un-American. And you can see where that goes. Right now, they're trying to do that in England. They're locking up people for X posts. Like literally, like murderers, 9 months. Bad X post, 2 years in prison. It's like, that's the slippery slope of like, then who is the arbiter of what's disinformation, misinformation? Who's to say that is hateful and this is not hateful? So like, that's what the thing is like, no, these rights don't come from the government. They're inalienable. They come from God. And we should be able to express the way that we feel. There's no difference of freedom of speech and freedom of thought, especially when it comes to Catholics. It's like, there's a time to, pro-life people are being arrested. Like there's a thin line right now. And if it wasn't for X, that free speech would be, there's like 10, 11 different pro-lifers in jail for literally just praying, not even trying to interfere with an abortion clinic, but just praying outside an abortion clinic. Like that's not the America I want to live in. Regardless if you disagree and you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, but to say that someone can't stand across the street and pray for somebody and like talk to someone who's walking, like that's un-American. And it's like, if you can't see that, and if you can't see that, killing people in other countries, like that's even Pope Francis is head of today was talking about it. Like they're talking about nuclear war right now. Joe Biden on his way out is like, no, we're going to give long range missiles to Ukraine to shoot into Russia. And Russia's saying, no, we're going to use nukes on you. Like if you're not concerned about that and the stability, and if you're pro-war, even in Russia and Ukraine, like that doesn't affect me right now. Nuclear war is not good for anybody, yet alone the Ukrainians and these millions of people have already died.
Yeah, what's the end strategy? Like what's the goal behind that strategy? That you are going to instigate and push another superpower by saying like, okay, we know what your red line is and we're just going to cross it. Yeah. What's the end goal?
Yeah, what I think is—
this is something I applauded because I don't appreciate with like one administration starts kind of enacting power when you haven't really assumed power yet. But I did appreciate Trump put that video out and he's like, no, Zelensky, Putin, call me because we have to figure this out. We can't allow ourselves to go down.
And if you're against that, then you're not—
what are your priorities?
Peace is the most important thing. Yeah. And these aren't just numbers on a piece of paper. These are people's lives. You're talking about taking out like a third of the whole entire country in Ukraine. These people are dying for what? For some imaginary lines? Yeah, I get it. They invaded and all these different things, but what's the solution? Nuclear war? Like there has to be, there's been no negotiations, no talks about anything of trying to fix it. Like, no, this is the way it is, and they're going to give it back, and like that's not going to work. There has to be a give and take. There has to be some adults in the room who are going to say, okay, historically this and the.
You saw they had that G20 summit, and they this just happened, and they took the photo without Biden.
Yeah, I saw that. It's disrespectful. It's like
that's disrespectful.
No one's taking him serious.
No.
So if he's not well enough to run for office, then Is he actually running the country? Like, what's going on? There has to be the 25th Amendment? Like, this is serious stuff with these missiles. Like, this isn't Ukraine. Like, Russia said, no, these missiles are from you. And not only are we giving them the missiles, but they couldn't fire them on their own. It would take U.S. experts to fire those missiles. Sure. It's not like you just hit a button and they fly. This isn't like Acme, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. It's like, no, the Americans are the ones who are going to be firing them. It's like, so what are we doing? Said it's $270 billion. It's
Come
like,
Holy Spirit. That's all we can say.
It's like, so if you think, well, that's good for the Democrat, like, these same companies and these same people, the Cheneys are there again in Iraq. They blew up a whole country and then Halliburton rebuilt it, and BlackRock's and
if you're listening to this part of the podcast and you need a break, SJE Plus on YouTube. What was last weekend? What was the date? The 17th?
17th, yeah.
Look up Father Sammy Miletta's homily for August 17th,
Don't worry about
2024.
You mean November?
Or November, yeah. November. Why did I say August? November 17th, 2024. His Sunday homily was about this. Mm-hmm. And I thought he did a great job. Oh, yeah, we were both there. Yeah. We both talked to him after Mass.
The title
I thought he did a great job.
The title of it is Don't Worry About What You Don't Know. So,
yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
So we should be praying. I mean, that's what we should be doing. Hopefully the reasonable people will take the levers of missiles and see that no one wins with sending long range missiles places. We should try to talk to our representatives to not cause World War III. I mean, it's a big deal. All right, so let's move on. So
let's move on to New Zealand. Bobby's like, I thought we were going to talk about Thanksgiving.
No, I don't care about
You saw the Hakka?
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about the Hakka, so we got to talk about the Hakka. It's everywhere. So you said you were going to give us a demonstration of the Hakka before we actually got into it.
Yes, I was definitely going to do that. Yes. Yeah. I wish I kind of knew how to do some of it. It's kind of intimidating.
It's impressive when it's on the rugby
legislative
pitch.
floor, I don't know, it's kind of cringe.
Yeah,
to
in
me.
the rugby pitch, cool.
Yeah.
When you're in Parliament, maybe not.
Maybe not.
So for those who haven't seen
Maoris,
it, maybe Mike can stitch it in here. Yeah, the Maoris.
I can put a video real quick.
Yeah, maybe Mike can stitch it in, show the Hakka. So you've seen the Hakka, Parliament floor.
And then it's like, they're all like, all of them start like it's Thriller. They all jump out. They all jump out. And they're all starting to do it. And then I see the video of somebody superimposed Nancy Pelosi's face on one of them.
I didn't see that.
I was dying. But then it gets, people just get like so tribal. That's what it is. It's tribal. It's like, well, just because you don't have any culture, I'm like, okay. All right, what does this have to do with that? No, there's decorum. There's different things like this. I say you don't like a bill, and that's culture. But then they fight back and say the Maoris were the tribe. Like, well, they were cannibals. They
There's
they
so
have
much
culture.
fighting back and forth over
is.
Something that's.
But it's like there's
seemingly.
decorum. There's decorum. That'd be like somebody jumping up and starting singing in Latin praise. Like there's just way that people have always done things, and when you do things like that, it just creates.
Well, how are you going to have any discussion, especially in the house?
Because it also looks intimidating. It almost looks aggressive.
What's intimidating about a 20-something-year-old girl just yelling in your face?
But trying to be like intimidating, like her faces.
How is that intimidating?
I mean, I know a lot of guys. I know a lot of guys who would cower to that.
Bobby,
you don't know the people I know.
I guess not. And I don't want to if they're going to cower in front of that.
Yeah, I mean.
You got to get a new group.
Yeah, I get it. There's a time and a place. I think it's really cool, though. The Hakka dance is like
that's what I'm saying. On a rugby pitch?
Like the All Blacks?
The All Blacks do it?
Oh, man.
Okay.
I watched that whole
I know
thing
that
on
guy's
Prime
doing a war
about
dance, and then in a couple minutes, he's going to be charging at me. Yeah. Okay, that's a different situation.
Getting fired up. But
I thought Walsh had a good take on it. I don't know if you saw it. I
didn't see it, no.
You got to watch Matt Walsh's take on it. And because he brings it into this idea of like, we started the conversation by talking about inculturation. And so while he didn't use that terminology, it's it's a wake-up call to us. Like, we should respect and preserve, and it's the responsibility of those whose culture it is to respect and preserve that which is good in your culture. But at some point, we have to assimilate. And that's why I bring up that thing in New Zealand, because there doesn't seem to be this desire to assimilate.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing, like, within the church. The church can do a great job at assimilating that which is good in other cultures, right? Other ways of saying, like, we baptize what is good in other cultures, right? Because anything that's good ultimately finds its source in God. But the idea that we're gonna just
only
kowtow
focus
and
on our
diminish that which is
differences.
good in us for that which you still preserve, like, that's not good for us moving forward as a people. And so, like, as whether you're going to say, like, as Catholics, we want to move forward as disciples in one church. Therefore, we ought to have one rite that we can celebrate together. That seems to be a good. And so we have to be careful where we draw those lines. In New Zealand, the issue they're having is you have competing cultures, you have competing worldviews, and there's no desire to assimilate. And so it's a lesson for us. They're going to have a problem moving forward together as a people, right? Because there isn't this eye to eye. There isn't a respect, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just a lesson for us to be able to say, yeah, it's good to practice elements of inculturation where we're going to celebrate aspects of a native culture. But at some point, we also have to say, like, if you want to be a part of this community, there are things that this community also celebrates and holds dear.
Yeah, we can run the trap of, diversity is our strength. I'm like, well, not really. I mean, diversity is important, but unification is our strength.
It's the both and.
It's the things that, like, yes, we can each come and bring something different, but what are the things that we unite over? What are the things that are higher than the culture?
Yeah,
There's
Jesus
something-
turns to his apostles and he doesn't pray that we may be diverse.
No.
He prays that we may be one. And so, like, yeah, bring your diversity because we're each unique before our Creator and we're given inalienable rights. And so some of those rights are freedom of expression and thought. And so, like, that's a good thing we want to preserve. But the unity that we share, like, whether it's in the country, whether it's in the church, whether it's in our communities, like, that has a value in and of itself. And it's something we ought to preserve.
Yeah, but
fight for.
Too much diversity can cause
dissension.
It's like there's a tipping, like, where it's too much. It's like if we just focus on our differences but nothing we're alike, it's like with between us and different Christians. Like, yeah, there's all these, 30, 40,000 different denominations. We should stop focusing all the time, always, and like, hey, well, you guys believe this? I'm like, no, what unifies us? Hey, we all believe in the Trinity. We all believe in the Incarnation. We believe in the creed. We believe in these things. And instead, what do? We focus on these ways that we're different, and you're wrong and I'm right. It's like, well, if we agree on 85, 90% of the stuff, how come we never talk about those things?
Well, that's something like this. Does every Catholic realize that you have a creed? I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. Every Catholic has a creed. How much do you reflect on your creed? How well do you know your creed? Is your creed something that you try to live your life by? Because you've pledged your life to it, right? In baptism, you've pledged to this creed. When you go to church on Sunday, when you go to daily mass, you pledge to that creed, and it ought to inform every aspect of your life. But I don't think we think in those terms. Right, we can look.
It's a summation of our faith. It's what creed means. From the credo, it means I believe or we believe. That's what it's like. So if a Jehovah's Witness comes banging on your door and they ask you, well, what do you believe? Like, you can just say the creed and you can tell them, this is exactly what I believe. This is a summation of our faith. That's why they did it. Everyone didn't have books. Most of the people, 95% of the people couldn't read. It's like all these different things. The reason why we've done all these different things, like the creed, it's like,
well, the reason the creed
share your faith with other people, and they had to fight the heretics. And
exactly. That was one, because there was this diversity of thought and interpretation of what Christ, who he was, and what he actually came to preach, and what his message, like, that diversity needed to be weeded through.
Yes, and the church had
we needed to say what was orthodox, what is true, what is actually
but that was the
worth
church
our
that came
ascent.
together doing it. It wasn't just what I thought or what this pastor thought or what this preacher thought. It was like the Holy Spirit was working through a council, through a committee where they came through, and it wasn't just picking and choosing what we want. I mean, that's where the division comes in. It's like, I want what I want, and you want what you want. It's like, okay, no, that's not how Jesus set it up. He set it up as, like you said earlier, is a monarchy. And if there's a monarchy, that means that there's Christ the King at the top. And then his vassals are the bishops who run the church. And we are to have loyalty to them. Like the deacon or the priest, they they say they're going to be loyal to them or their successors. It's like there's a way that it goes in, but we have to step into that circle. We can't just pick and choose what we want to believe. It's like, no, when we get into the church, we are welcome to the church. We have to profess that creed. That's why we say it every Sunday to remind us, like, this is what we believe. You can't.
And so when we go to church, this comes out on Friday.
Yeah.
When this comes out on Friday, this weekend is Christ the King. This idea that I'm a part of something larger than myself. I'm united actually, and the term that we use is this mystical body, this body that transcends the physical. I'm actually a part of this body, and that body has as head Christ.
There's only one of them. It's only one body.
There's only one body.
And that's where we get a lot of mix up, because it's the people who have already died and us, we're the same body. It isn't all of a sudden they're just dead. And like, no, Christ tells us many times that, he's the God of the living, that they're, the saints are in heaven, but we're one body. It's the mystical body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful thing, but to celebrate this Christ is King of the universe is perfect timing of how it's set up. Like the church is the genius of Catholicism and the beauty of Catholicism is that everything is so thought out. It's not random. There's nothing random within our church. It's literally the end of this liturgical year, and then the next Sunday is the start of Advent. And the word Advent comes from a coming of a king. It's like that's the term historically had to do with the coming, prepare the way for the king, and the good news, the euangelion, where the word evangelization comes from, is that prepare the way for the king was after he conquered and won, the traveling king would come in, and there would be people in front of him shouting to the town, the good news, we won the battle, we won the war. And that's what the apostles did. That's what they did after they were sent out. They would go into towns and proclaim the good news that Caesar's not king, Christ is the king. Kyrios, where we say Kyrie eleison, Jesus is Lord. Instead of Caesar's Lord, Jesus is Lord. And they were willing to die to say that, because no, Caesar was Lord at that time. Like anybody who's around. So it was a battle. It was a battle cry, but it was dangerous. But that's what Jesus did at the end before he went into Jerusalem. He, like a triumphant king, was being led into Jerusalem, not on a stallion, but on a horse, But his kingdom wasn't on a throne, it was on a cross. And his crown wasn't of gold, it was of crowns. His kingdom wasn't, what they were expecting or what we would expect. It was going to be one of power, but instead it was going to be one of sacrifice and of love. And that's the end of our liturgical year, preparing us. They put this date of Christ the King right before we prepare for the coming of the King. Advent is the coming of the Messiah, the baby Jesus, the coming of Jesus into our hearts, and the second coming of Jesus when he will be crowned Christ of the universe. So it's set up from I believe 1925 is when they added this to the canon and to the calendar, that this is going to be the end of our liturgical year. We're going to celebrate Christ the King, acknowledge him as our Messiah, as the King, and right before we prepare the way for the King coming for Advent.
Mm-hmm.
I digress. But there's just so many cool things. I mean, the kingdom is a big deal. You know what I'm saying?
You had me a little speechless there, Bobby.
Well, the kingdom, what's the first thing that Jesus announces? What's the first thing he announces? The kingdom is at hand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what the first thing he says, the kingdom is at hand. So this is the hard thing I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding. I know I do, because I continually try to search for better answers. Like, what is the kingdom of God? Like, how do we know that, Jesus, he says the kingdom has come, it's here. We pray in our Father, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And I think that's where the answer lies in that prayer, that his kingdom comes when his will is done.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do God's will? That's the question, Khalil. How do we do God's will?
We do God's will by aligning ourselves to him and being made in his image, right? That's the way you do God's will, because you have a will that you've been blessed with, because you've been made in the image of God who himself wills. And so the more that you align your will to him, the more you manifest the coming of his kingdom.
Yeah, I think you said it before too, like Romans 12, be transformed with the renewal of your mind so that you'll know God's will. It's like we have to change not our mind to conform to the world, that people are pulling us here to believe this politician or the way of the world, but have our minds transformed to be, like his.
Where my head's at I appreciate that truly everything you just said. I think what I appreciate in God's providence that we're celebrating Christ the King so close to the end of the election cycle, where everybody's maybe still immersed in what just happened, these last 18 months in the political season, and who's going to be the president, and where's the House going to go, and where's the Senate going to go, and all of these little questions about the rulers of this world. And what I appreciate that the church is doing, what God's doing, reminding us that Christ is in control. And he's not only king of this world, he's king of the universe, that no one stands above his power, and therefore no one here stands outside and above his power. And that's where we say, pray, trust, and don't worry, or pray, hope, and don't worry, because we ultimately know that his providence rules and not the providence of those that we elect for short periods of time. Yeah. So in that, we shouldn't be worried. In that, we shouldn't be concerned. Yeah, we have to be mindful and be good citizens and do the things that good citizens ought to do, right? To speak into who's going to govern us and to speak into legislation and to work for that which is good, peace, and all those things. That's all great. But ultimately, we find our strength in knowing that God's the one who's in control, that Christ, in being king, is the head, not just of the church, but of all things under creation and within creation.
Yeah, and I think that,
so I appreciate the timing of that.
Yeah, it's
a good reminder for people
Catholic
that
New
he's
Year.
in control.
It's Catholic New Year. It's an end of the liturgical year. It's a start of the new year. It's not some pagan, the Chinese New Year or the Lunar New Year, those things. Like, no, this is what the beauty of the Catholicism is, living liturgically. It's like the year is over. We're starting a new liturgical year. This is how it's set up that way. But it's just, with the politics stuff, is that too many people want to make like the president or these people kings in our minds. And God warned us so much of that throughout history. He never gave them kings off the rip, right? Like the judges came. They weren't actual judges with black robes. They were people like prophets that came to help, like Gideon came. Gideon had fought against, all the Amalekites, and these different people were attacking their crops. And after he defeated this army of 60,000 people with 300 people, the people wanted to make him a king. And he retreated, said, no, I'm not going to be the king. And then eventually we get the people clamoring for a king. They wanted a king, but God's king. And anytime we take a king and put him there, we're diminishing what God is, and that's part of the problem. And look what happened. God finally said, you want a king? You don't want me? I'm not good enough to be the king for you? All right, you can have a king, but I'm telling you, it's going to be a problem. No, we want him anyways. All these other pagan countries have it. Next thing you know, Saul becomes the king because he's better looking, he's tall, he's, they pick him. And then he, like all other men, he fails. Just like David, who was like the prototypical king. He failed, even a man after God's own heart, he still failed. So we have all these other people that we think are going to step into that role that only God.
But here's where, again, the reminder is, because God's ultimately in control, yes, there are things that can happen now that can affect us, yeah. But we should find peace and solace in knowing that ultimately we are under God's watchful eye and protection. Because that same leader, David, who was an adulterer and a murderer, also gave us the Psalms, was also the anointed of God. Like, God was able to do through David wonderful things. Yeah. Not because of David's strength or not by anything that David merited, but because God is ultimately in control, he can use that which is crooked to right straight. Yeah. And so even in today's times, like, he can use things that are crooked to right straight. Yeah. We just have to do our part. We have to trust in him. We do have to have a prayer life that feeds us and that gives us the strength we need to be the types of disciples and citizens we ought to be in this day and age. And when you do that, you begin to see through lenses that are otherworldly. You begin to see through lenses that put God in his proper place. Yeah. Christ the King is a reminder of that. Yeah. It's a reminder to put things in their proper place. Yeah. He's in control. I'm his, not just servant, but he calls me friend. And he watches out for his friends. Yeah.
But I think if we lose this whole idea of kingship and the kingdom, it's one of the major themes of the whole entire Bible, that this plan didn't just happen and Jesus just wasn't born in a stable out of thin air, that he came to restore the kingdom, the 12 tribes that dissolved after the Babylonian, the Syrians came in, and Jesus came to bring the tribes together. That's why he called the 12, and he kept saying, the kingdom's here at hand, the kingdom's here. And at the very end of his life, when he's dying, the good thief stole, said.
That's where it's important, again, to weave in other biblical images. Jesus reminds us to judge a tree by its fruit, not by the appearance of the tree.
Not what they say, but what they do.
By what they do. And so if we judge things by their fruit, if we judge people by their fruit, if we judge policy by what it produces, if we judge ideas by what they can bring about, whether it's fruition or subjugation, that's what matters. And so let's be mindful as we're kind of moving into this new political season, as we're moving into this new year, like those are the things that count. So let's judge things by what they produce. And so are we producing things that move towards unity? Are we producing things that move toward peace? Are we producing things that move towards stability? Are we producing things that respect freedom and the freedoms that we've been given by our Creator? And if we are, yes, then good. That's a work of God. That's a thing of God. And so on Thanksgiving, so to weave in Thanksgiving, it's this idea that we as a country, we as a people, we as a collective body take a moment to pause on the last Thursday of the month to turn and give thanks to our Father in the heavens, right? Those are the words of Abraham Lincoln. To think that an American president, right, was talking that way, like that's something we ought to always keep in mind. Those are the principles, and that was the culture that founded this country and that moved this country through very difficult times. And not just the language, again, the fruit, to institute a day where we as a country can turn our eyes towards our Father in the heavens and give thanks for the bounty that he's blessed us with. What's more symbolic, what's more unifying than that? And so, yeah, it's a federal holiday, if you were. The idea that Thanksgiving, we're going to take this pause. Let's not lose the spirit of Thanksgiving. Yeah, it's a federal holiday. Let's not lose the importance of it. This idea that we find rest on this day. We give true thanks on this day. We don't get taken up with consumerism on this day. My dad, when I grew up, he owned multiple restaurants. A lot of them were in malls. I saw firsthand the creeping Black Friday, where it was like, okay, it was going to start first thing on Friday. Then it was like, doors open at 11 a.m. Doors started opening up at 6 a.m. People started lining up at midnight. Pretty soon malls were open Thanksgiving evening. And now we're just seeing it the whole time. Black Friday sales start on the 21st on Amazon. So it's like, don't lose Thanksgiving to consumerism. We were talking about the Bears, like football. It's a fun thing. It's a great thing, something you can enjoy. Don't lose Thanksgiving to the NFL schedule where you're just going to get together, get hammered, and just watch games back to back.
Yeah.
And so the celebrations of Thanksgiving that we can appreciate and we should preserve are those of going to the Mass, right? Paying homage to Christ the King, giving thanks by celebrating in the actual act of thanks that he gave us. The Eucharist, which means Thanksgiving. So what better way, is that something maybe you want to start this year? Is that a tradition you want to bring to your family? Is that the lenses you want your kids to be formed in? On Thanksgiving, it's not just about the gathering. It's not about decorating the house. It's not about we got to go to grandma's house here. We got to go to grandma's house here. That's all great. We're going to watch. That's all great. We can all celebrate. I'm going to be doing those things. But as a family, can we start with the Mass?
Start with the
As
Mass.
a family,
yes.
Can we serve? Maybe is there an opportunity for us to serve? This Thanksgiving, we're serving 1,100 meals out of the parish, right? People all over Northwest Indiana. Great way to give thanks, right? I'm going to take pause and I'm going to help provide for those who are going without.
Put our faith into action.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there has been a lot of this consternation on the internet and all this division that people are even suggesting to go and don't go to your Thanksgiving. If your uncle voted for somebody you didn't vote for, don't talk to him or ostracize him. Don't.
Oh, I've seen so many videos of that.
It's
like
so
people are doing it
brutal.
pridefully.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like the same advice they're giving about COVID. Well, if they didn't get vaxxed, then don't even go to them and yell at them. You're
that's the work of the devil. That's the work of the evil one.
That is not.
He
good.
wants nothing but to divide us,
regardless of who you. Even if they're not Christian, even if they voted for someone different, they're your family. This is a time to get together to give thanks, regardless if it's been a bad year. We're called to give thanks even in the tough times. It's like, give thanks always. and to pray unceasingly. It's like there's so many like scripture passages that it's about give thanks. I mean, the Last Supper. It's like anytime Jesus prays,
Well, Jesus
he gives
institutes
thanks.
the Last Supper, giving thanks that his body is about to be broken and consumed.
Yes, it doesn't
And in
get
that, he
any-
gives thanks.
He gives us the example, of what to
Knowing
do.
that in a few hours, he's entering into his passion.
Yeah.
Knowing that in a few hours, he's going to be chained and imprisoned. Knowing that in a few hours, he's going to be
Betrayed.
scourged and
betrayed by
flogged.
his friends. that are
Knowing
sitting
that a
with him.
cross is going to be placed on his shoulders, he pauses and he gives thanks.
Yes.
And he commissions his apostles and his disciples to do the same.
Yeah.
It's a mandate that we all have to live in this spirit of gratitude.
And don't think Thanksgiving is all just about the pilgrims either, because the first Thanksgiving is 1621.
I was waiting for Bobby to bring that up.
It would not be
I was waiting
possible
for
without
Bobby.
the Catholic
You mean
Squanto.
It wasn't the Mayflower?
No, well, no, that was part. I mean, the
It's
first,
part of it, but you
that-
want to go back.
No, the first actual Thanksgiving was Catholic in St. Augustine, Florida, in the 50 years before Plymouth Rock, 1620. But in 1621, at the first Thanksgiving, wouldn't be possible without a Catholic. That's the story of Squanto.
Tell people about Squanto.
So
We've talked about Squanto before.
Yeah, Squanto was a Native American from, I think, the Patuxet tribe. And I think it was John Smith kidnapped him, took him to Spain, tried to sell him into slavery, and some Franciscan priests bought him in Spain, set him free, and let him go to England. He worked in England for like 5 years. He learned English. The Franciscans converted him. He got baptized. He became Catholic, learned English. He worked in the shipyards. Then until he finally found a ride to someone who was going to take him back to where he's from, in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So he went back. The Pilgrims show up. They tried communism. It didn't work out. A lot of people died. True story. Look it up. They tried communism. We're going to pool everything together and everyone's going to love each other. Like, no, that doesn't work. And a lot of people died. And the crops that they brought weren't satisfactory for the climate from when they were coming from England to Massachusetts. So Squanto knew the language and showed them like, hey, if you take fish and fertilizer, and he showed them how to do the how to grow food. And they had this person who was an interpreter basically, but he became Catholic, and he showed the pilgrims how to farm. They survived, and they had this meal of Thanksgiving in 1621, but they never would have did it if it wasn't for the Catholic so there is a big part of Catholicism in this, pilgrim puritanical celebration. But Catholics are
Love
involved.
it. I love how you even. I was waiting for St. Augustine to pop
Yeah,
up.
St. Augustine in the which is actually, I believe the date was on the
Well, that was the first Catholic Mass celebrated
first Catholic
in the
Mass
New World.
in the New World. I
Yeah.
want to say it was on the birthday of Mary too. I want to say that was the day. And the day before this comes out would be the presentation of Mary's on Thursday. But Mary had a
Mike's
large
gonna
role.
get like up to young Jamie's skills. We just pop up to like.
Pop up, bam, bam,
I was
bam.
wondering. I
Yeah.
was like, how does he do that? Because even when you guys were talking about the Hakka, he would already had it pulled up, and he didn't. They don't script. I don't think they script. Joe
No,
Rogan.
because they just go free flow. But he'll have like 5 videos of the Hakka
That's what I'm
pop pulled up.
saying. Like, how quick is that? I don't know.
Eventually, Mike's gonna get there.
Yeah.
Young Jacobilski's on the. He's already on it.
We're working on it. So
Young
what
Jay.
what are you hosting Thanksgiving this year?
I am, but Dima's working, so they have it mandatory, so she's working. So we each divvied up like the dishes, and I think I got what did I get? I'm glad she wrote this down. I think I got the stuffing and the something
You better
else.
double check. You know what I really like, the tradition that's really taking on is the Friendsgiving. So now we get like multiple
You gotta do
Thanksgivings.
potlucks? Oh no, multiples.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like, well, you like Friendsgivings, like friends get together and have
Sure.
their own, like someone brings the turkey and someone brings all the stuff, but it's,
Yeah, Father did that at his Connect group last Friday.
we're doing our Connect group this Friday, Friendsgiving at the Yaks.
Oh, so I know where I'm going to be on Friday.
Hey, more the merrier. Well, that Friday we're doing a men's chili cook-off.
Monday.
Monday, yeah.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
I say Friday? I meant Monday. Yeah, the Friday's the potluck for Friendsgiving, and then Monday's the men's chili.
You making
cook-off.
chili?
Oh yeah. Right now we have 8 different chilies.
Are we voting?
Yeah, there's gonna be a vote and there's a prize. The winner is gonna get.
Oh, there's a prize. What's the prize?
I got a couple things I'm working on. I
I
was
mean,
gonna
they're
do.
not surprises.
I was
They're
gonna
prizes. What are
I was
they?
gonna do a couple books and maybe like a bottle of wine I don't get down with bourbon, so I don't know. But I was
Okay.
gonna do a couple books.
Some Buffalo
did-
Trace.
I did before I came here. Guess
That
what?
Lake Liquors.
Guess what just came in the mail?
What do you got?
Just came out today.
What?
I went home. I rushed home. Quick shower to open up my Amazon package. We Who Wrestle with God, Jordan Peterson, hot off the press.
Nice.
Came out today. I got the copy. It's this thick.
You did a pre-order?
It's this thick.
Yeah.
It's like double the size of his other 2 books. So
I want to check that out.
yeah, I'm going to read it. And
Let me know if it's a good read. I just got last week the 2-volume commentary that Word on Fire put out, St. Thomas Aquinas on the Scriptures,
oh, okay.
Old Testament, New Testament.
I-
Really good.
I did, through a Catholic couple, have a new affiliate partnership with Ignatius Press, and they're sending me the new Catholic Ignatius study Bible that they've been working on for 25 years.
Don't be plugging your other sponsorships.
Oh yeah, for
on
this
there.
code down here, Michael, throw it in there, 10% off while you're Ignatius Press. But I'm going to get the Ignatius study Bibles like this.
They do great stuff.
Well, I've been buying
Yeah, Ignatius, I love their
I've been
study
buying
Bible.
they've been using just individual books as they've been going to help keep the money going. But Dr. Scott Hahn and Dr. Swaffer, all these people have been working on this for 25 years, this study Bible. So I'm interested in, I have multiple Bibles, and I think people should have, I like the New American, but I like the RSV CE version.
I like the NAB, which is the New American Bible,
Yeah,
or
that
the
we read in Mass.
NRSV.
RSV.
But CE, the Catholic, there's a Catholic
there's
edition.
Catholic. But it's good to have multiple but
Unless you know the Greek,
yes.
then it's good to have multiple translations, not because there's a weakness to any one interpretation, but there's no way to fully capture from one language as somebody I speak 2 languages. Okay. It's hard to translate meaning word for word just at one pass. Yeah. And something like Greek, especially biblical Greek, it's good to have multiple translations because they give you a fuller look at what the original was trying to say.
Yeah.
And so you have dynamic translations, there's static translations, there's which is more of a literal translation. So if you have those multiple translations and Scripture is something that really is a part of your prayer life, then you're able to pull up a passage, read it in those different translations, and just get a fuller sense of what Paul or whoever the original author was trying to say.
And there's a lot of internet sources like Bible Hub.
Which Christians—
which is nice. You pull up a thing and then you could look 10 different translations.
I used to get this from my Muslim friends. Why are there so many different translations of the Bible? There's only one translation of the Quran.
I thought Catholics were executing people who try to translate the Bible. No. That's always the argument from the one guy they did execute who was heretically translating the Bible, Tinsdale or whatever. You never heard that story?
No.
In the 1200s or whatever?
No.
Because we were trying to keep the Bible to ourselves. No. You haven't
Well,
heard that?
I know that, but I don't know about the whole Tinsdale story.
Yeah.
But I used to get that. Why are there so many translations? That's why there's so many translations, because you can't fully capture
so the
word of
Quran
God.
is just one translation, basically?
That's what they attest to. But
yeah. But I think there's—
But to read the Quran, you should, that's why they teach Arabic. So for us—
if we knew Greek, it would be one.
But they're really good at that.
But even their
hats off to
translation,
them.
because I do listen to a Greek Orthodox, and he knows Hebrew and Greek and English, obviously, and he knows Aramaic. And so he'll he's the Bible, he's doing a Bible in a year, but it's Bible in 5 years, because it's 40 minutes is one chapter.
Sure.
But he knows the Greek, and their study Greek Bible is well, this is not a good Hebrew translation from the Hebrew, especially the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. So even from the Hebrew to the Greek is not the same, because he knows all the languages. So it's cool to hear all those different things. But what I was getting at with this study Bible, it's also good to have a study Bible, because it's over 60,000 hyperlinks of what's going on, and try to pick it up.
Just be careful of what study Bible you're getting, because there's plenty of them out there.
Yeah.
You want a study Bible that's done by Catholics who are respected in the field.
Yes.
So Scott Hahn, there's no questioning his voice when it comes to interpreting text. Yes. The Navarre Bible, University of Navarre, excellent Bible. The Word on Fire Bible, they've got their study commentary.
I got those two.
Excellent Bible. So you want to be going to study Bibles that are credible.
Shout out
Great
to
Adventure Bible, yeah.
I just got one. They have a deal with educators. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
They got educators. If you're an educator, you can get it just for shipping. It's a $60 Bible. It's a beautiful, leather bound, beautiful Bible, but it has the timeline, because that's what Katie uses, and she was so nice and got me one for myself. So, nice. But because there is different translations, then you can find which one. Like Jeff Caven always says from the Great Adventure Bible, whatever Bible makes you want to read it, use that one.
Yeah.
Whatever one is speaking to you. Some are different. Like Psalm.
I can't do the King James Bible.
I can't, but I can't do Psalm 23 in the New American Bible. I don't want to hear about verdant pastures. Everybody knows Psalm 23 is the most famous psalm. Yeah. If it's not the OG way, it's I hate the the verdant pastures, and it's like it's
Yeah.
everyone knows
That's good advice. Read the Bible.
And whatever one
Pick the Bible that you actually want to read. Yeah.
makes you want to read it, then read that one. And what's good about the Great American Bible is wherever Jesus is talking, it's in red. It's different. So when he's actually speaking, you can see those are his words versus like, the narration part of it, which is cool. It helps. It does, especially if you're doing Lexio or if you're,
it's a nice tool.
It's a nice tool to help you kind of focus in on stuff like that. So celebrate Christ the King by studying the kingdom, studying his word to try to get to know him better, get serious about Mass, and remember why you're there, to give thanks, that's what the Eucharist is. It's his greatest thanksgiving, but we are actually getting the greatest gift back,
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So Purposely Catholic on Instagram. This has been fun. Somehow we managed to weave in
politics. Hopefully,
an Amazonian right.
Hopefully, we only made 2 people mad this time. Hopefully, only 2 people.
Yeah, the people of the Amazon and the Maori tribe.
Yeah, they're definitely not going to like me. But
we say all this with love and respect.
With love and respect, yeah.
Yes. So happy Thanksgiving, because this comes out.
We're almost at 70,000
right
on Instagram, so we're pretty active on Instagram. So reach out to us.
Purposely Catholic on Instagram and on YouTube.
Amen.
All right. Take care. God bless.